I wonder if anybody can actually... Ah, Ben, hi. Hi. Hey. Hello, Nigel. Hello, Nigel. Hello, everybody. Ooh, fancy set. Yeah, well, it's a little bit more up to date than when I did the Allegri, when I had equipment that was probably as old as the music that we were working on for that project. But yes, new kit. I was told to get myself up to date, drag myself into this century. Even got a new computer, which is amazing. My son loves it because it means he can just play endless games now on the old computer. Anyway, I hope. Yes, so the quality of the picture is excellent. Ben very kindly pointed out that he can now see all of the lines on my face, rather than just that. I think I'll go back to the old one actually. Oh, so that's what you look like, Nikki. Yeah, sorry. I'm afraid it is. Nothing I can do about that. I could turn the lights off and close all the curtains. Welcome to 2021, Nigel. Yes, I know. Can we have it any louder? Is that me or the mic? The microphone is turned up, so maybe I've just got to speak a bit louder and a bit closer to the microphone. Ooh, hope that boom wasn't too loud. Is that any better? Don't worry about the lines. Well, there isn't much I can do about them. Looking great, Nigel. Well, that's Ben. He's paid to say that. Yes. Oh, how amazing to see all these messages. This connectivity is extraordinary, isn't it? And yeah, it is amazing to be working on this new project. I'm not going to start talking just yet. I've got my refreshments lined up. I hope everybody else has. Water. So when I start speaking, I will make sure that I'm kind of not mumbling. And if I am mumbling, then just write the word mumble, or don't mumble. So how is everybody? God, I thought this would all be over when we were doing the Allegri. Certainly no singing yet in our church services. Oh, yeah, it's tough for everybody. So my son has been singing in his choir and here in Cambridge, and all the boys were allowed to operate as a bubble. So they were in the choir stalls as normal, but all the choral scholars had to be a row back, so 2 rows back and 2 meters apart. So the poor basses were a whole set of choir stalls away from the boys. So they've been doing that for months. It's so tough. Oh, somebody, C. Buxton was in Wells. Oh, you heard the Path of Miracles. Oh my, I can never do that piece. I mean, none of us can perform that piece without ever feeling like an emotional wreck at the end of it. I'm trying to persuade Mark and Ben to consider it for the future. I mean, it's a very different kettle of fish from the Allegri and from Spem and Alium, but it is an astonishing work by Joby Talbot. Gosh, my eyesight hasn't improved any, though, I can tell you that. All these messages going past. Northern Symphonia singers are doing outside singing 6 feet apart. Yeah, Tenebrae are still 2 meters apart, and despite all the rules changing here in the UK, we've been advised we just have to stay doing all the usual measures, basically because if one member of the choir either catches COVID or is pinged for whatever reason, then the whole choir would be told to self-isolate. So obviously the singers, they can't afford that risk. So we've got to stay at 2 meters, and it's jolly tough. Is there a venue big enough, do you think, to take a choir that could do Spem in Alium? It'd have to be at least 80 meters long, wouldn't it? 2 meters between each singer. Is that right? It'd have to be very, very big anyway. First heard Path of Miracles in Santiago de Compostela. Oh wow! You sang Spem there. Oh yeah, in that amazing chapel. That was just was that for Martin Randall's travel company? Poor Martin. I mean, his business has been absolutely decimated by this. Sorry, I keep clunking the microphone. Yes, we sang in that extraordinary chapel, absolutely vast, and it's just hidden. It's right next to the cathedral in Compostela, but I think it must be part of a monastery, and it's kind of hidden. It's really extraordinary. But yeah, so you were there, and we did something else, didn't we? Wasn't there another work? Maybe it was the Brummel, the earthquake mass, I think we did, which is in 12 parts, which I sang in a recording for the Tallis Scholars 1,000,000 years ago. That was wonderful. 2 a part, so 24 singers, which for the Tallis Scholars in those days was kind of ginormous. Spanish Place. Oh yeah, the glorious church, St James's Spanish Place. Yes, that'd be wonderful to sing Spem in there. I think I've done Russian Treasures and Brahms and Bruckner in that building. They've got a very nice organ. That's an amazingly wonderful church. Again, sort of hidden, really, in London. It's not known at all, is it? So we are 6:57. Oh, welcome everybody. How nice to see all these messages. I hope everybody's been well and nobody's been suffering too much from all the implications and the impacts of COVID. It's grim, but it's brilliant to see that the self-isolation choir is going from strength to strength. And I don't know, are you now officially called that other thing? I don't want to say it in case it's not actually been announced yet. Maybe Ben or somebody official will say yes, you are allowed to call it this other name. I hope so, because I've kind of given it away. Mumbling away. So, good evening. Our choir is electric, literally. Choir of the Earth, there you are. Yes, you do. You know. And I wonder how many members of Choir of the Earth there are going to be maybe by the end of 2021. Should we have a guessing game? I'm going to say 25,000 it'll be, and its fame and reputation will be spreading at a rate of knots at the moment, probably as fast as COVID. Sorry, it's not a very sensitive joke, is it? Sorry. Yes, get vaccinated, folks. I'm double vaccinated. Never trust Nigel with a secret, anyone. Good to see all of you guys too. 25,000, there you are. We'll do nicely. Okay. If Spem has anything to do with it, then 4,572,582. Why that number? Interesting. It's a bit quiet. Got sound on full. I have. I promise I'll speak up. I'm mumbling at the moment. Look, it is 7 o'clock, so I think we should begin. The choir will go love that, Ben England. The choir will go viral. Lovely. Excellent. Look, I'm going to begin. Somebody's saying, give our Russian concert a listen. I did listen the other day, but I was in town. I was in Cambridge with my children, and I didn't get back till 4 o'clock, and the concert started at 3 o'clock. But I got in touch with Ben, actually, in the middle of it, whilst I was listening to it, and he was sort of having his tea or something. So I was sort of slightly perplexed, as I often am with technology. And then I realised that I was watching it, or Ben told me I was watching it after the event, but it sounded amazing. I was absolutely gobsmacked. I thought it sounded really, really beautiful. I mean, not that I'm surprised, but it was so just refined and brilliantly put together. And everybody's obviously in good voice and, sounding kind of nice and relaxed, which is what you need to do with that Russian stuff. When you perform it live, it's awful if you get the wobbles, because there's not much way back from that. But no, I thought the Russian thing, the Allegria, I obviously heard and went through it with you. I was amazed by that, but I thought the Russian stuff was amazing. Ben, congratulations to you for getting everybody through that. It was, because there's some tricky stuff there, and it just sounded like it was so effortless, which is what you want. Wonderful. But look, we aren't bad, are we? No, you're not. You're absolutely wonderful. Russian concert, gobsmacked. We'll take that. Good. Yeah, I've got to get used to this, haven't I? We've got 40 90-minute sessions, so there's 90 minutes with each voice part for Spem. So I don't know what that tots up to in hours. Probably, is it 60 hours? Where I've got to watch what I say and make sure I can't ever be quoted again saying something either rude or defamatory, libelous, scandalous, scurrilous. Anyway, so look, we are going to start. Spem in Alium by Thomas Tallis. My word, what an extraordinary piece. Iconic, really, for the English Renaissance period. Not really anything else like it. And what a journey this piece has had. I mean, it's a bit like the Allegri, isn't it? In that its origins are just shrouded in mystery. I don't know if everybody's read the long 70-page article by Hugh Keat, who's put the score together that we're working on. And he's got his own takes on how the piece sort of came to be, and they're all fascinating. It's all, I think it's absolutely extraordinary. It would make a brilliant sort of film documentary. Have some serious actors, doing all the plots and whatever. If you haven't seen that article, you should read it, because it's just fascinating, and there's all sorts of historical stuff in there that I think is amazing. And of course, if you were to make a film of it, you could use computer graphic images, couldn't you? CGI. There you are. I am catching up with the 21st century. To recreate the palace of Nonsuch. Of course, it doesn't exist. There are some sort of sketches of what Henry VIII. I think it was Henry VIII that built it, wasn't it? What he wanted it to look like, and you could actually recreate it, couldn't you? So look, this piece, 40. How on earth? Where did the idea come from? A composer called Alessandro Striggio had written 40-part mass and a motet, and we think he came to England. Whether or not he met Tallis, no one really knows. There are various theories, thoughts about how Tallis came to write this work, was it kind of a challenge? Oh, somebody in Italy has written a wonderful piece that's in 40 parts. We don't have anything like that, do we? Did he write it as an exercise just to prove that it could be done? Or was it actually all rather more murky? Tallis obviously lived at a time in England that was rather, fraught with fear as the sort of transformation from a Catholic nation to a Protestant one was happening, and we all know that it was a brutal time, absolutely horrific, and Thomas Tallis was a lifelong Catholic, but was a favourite of Queen Elizabeth I, who was obviously overseeing as the reigning monarch the transformation into a Protestant country, and she knew that in this country that was where things were heading, but she somehow she found it in her heart to turn a blind eye to the sort of the Catholic leanings of both Thomas Tallis and William Byrd, and I'm sure many other sort of talented individuals around, and I think it's sort of fascinating that there are certain works written in Latin, which the Church of England was trying to get away from, that she allowed, and this is obviously one. But why did he write it? Golly, I mean, it's really, the 70-page article puts so many different ideas in your head as to why and how it's been put together. Not how, but why. Was there actually a plot by the biggest sort of players at the time, Duke of Norfolk, and various the Arundel, Fitzalan, Duke. Is it the Duke of Arundel? I'm not sure, but Arundel Castle. Fitzalan was the name of the sort of aristocratic family there, and they were die-hard Catholics, and along with one or two others, did they introduce Strigio to Tallis and say, is Spem and Alium a sort of sympathetic calling card, if you like, sort of say, I'm with you, but I can't be with you. I mean, we'll never really know, but I do think it would make a fascinating film to sort of put all these ideas down. Where was it first performed? Was it performed in the Long Gallery at Arundel House for recusant Catholics hiding away from public eye? 40 parts. Why 40? Was it just to match Strigio's work, or was it 40 parts to celebrate something else? Was it the 40th birthday of Queen Elizabeth I? I mean, there are so many different ideas that are around. There's a thing called the Rodolphi plot, and it's well worth looking at that. And I have to say, I have some sympathy with Hugh Keat, who thinks there may be a little bit more to this than meets the eye. When you sing Spem in Alium, 40 singers, do you sing in a big semicircle, a circle? I've done it with both. Done it with the 8 choirs. Well, of course, Hugh Keat thinks it's 4 10-part choirs. So rather than 8 choirs, choirs 1 and 2 are lumped into one choir. And if you put them in, north, east, south, east in a big church, do you? So you imagine your surround sound. Suddenly, you get little lines that are isolated. So if you were in the middle, if you were those members of the aristocracy that would have kind of been placed in the posh chairs, the expensive seats, if you like, next to a monarch or somebody that was the guest of honour, then you would have heard certain lines of text being sung from a mass of singers in front of you, and then you would have heard certain lines coming from behind you, from people that would have been hidden from view. So I think this is a very interesting notion that, like an echo from the past, there might have been lines of text that were deliberately meant to be sung from people out of view. It's all really fascinating. And of course, you can work out when you choose your lines that you're going to sing, whether you might have been one of the ones that were on, are you going to be a Footlight Fanny and be at the front of stage in choir 1, 2, 3 or 4, or are you going to be one of those that are hidden from view at the back? Which part are you going to sing? So I think, personally speaking, there isn't much of a difference in terms of difficulty or the amount you have to sing between any particular soprano part. I keep trying to get used to Hugh Keats' scoring idea, which is choir 1A or B, choir 2. But I'm so old and fuddy-duddy, and my brain can't cope with the change. So I'm afraid I still refer to choir 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't think there's a great deal of difference in terms of the difficulty between soprano 1 to 8, alto 1 to 8, tenor 1 to 8, baritone 1 to 8, or bass 1 to 8. The difference in the tessitura is minimal. So some of the parts maybe go one note higher or one note lower. So I don't think really, if you want an easier part, I'm not sure I can tell you this part is going to be easy. What I would do, I think, is choose a part, have a quick look at it, and find a couple, just like pin the tail on a donkey, go through the score and find a spot and look at that one phrase and see if you can do it. And I think if you can, then just choose it almost at random and then stick with it. If you can learn that part relatively easily and you want to do more, then do the same thing. If you get through a part as maybe a soprano and you think, gosh, it's just too relentlessly high, you could try an alto part, but I personally think it's much lower. Most of the soprano parts are sort of from a top G down to middle C, and then the alto parts, some of them go up to a D, so a ninth above middle C, but most of them go down to a low G. So you might want to just be careful about which one you choose. Tenors, most of you are going to find yourselves in the same range, and likewise baritones. If you're a tenor that struggles with top Gs, just pinging them out long term, you might want to have a look at one of the baritone parts, because they go to Ds, and they don't go that low. I think they go to a C, an octave below middle C. So that's a good option for you. Basses, if you're a baritone, then obviously one of the baritone parts, or basses. This choir, the Choir of the Earth, has lots of excellent basses, and I particularly like a very steely, solid sound in the bottom part in a big work like this. So I would, if you are a low bass, I'm sure many of you will have listened to the Russian tracks, and you hear Jimmy Holiday and what he's done with the parts in Spem, and Will Gaunt as well. But I think if you're on one of those bottom parts, I love that big. It's a steely sound, but it's not thin. It's just I can't ever, I've never been able to sing very low or high, and the middle was always pretty rough as well. But I think if you've got that solid sort of metallic sound at the bottom, then that's a great thing to go for. So I think there should be plenty of options for everybody to find something. If we want to choose more than one part, then of course you're welcome to do as many parts as you want, but you will have to probably suffer me just talking endlessly for weeks. I mean, this is going on for a month, isn't it? Nearly, these things. So you might go crazy, or just fall into a deep sleep, listening to me babble on endlessly. Of course, we will have the interest of the individual parts. I think, as we spoke about with the Renaissance program we did before with the Allegri, I personally prefer, and all my singers know that I like this, and so when they came to my house to record their parts, I prefer a relatively straightforward approach to this music. I don't like it to be too free and have too much vibrato. So Nigel's intro is making the excitement too much to cope for me. I sang it on a singing day now to really learn Spem. Love talking to you, Nigel. Well, I think I prefer a cleaner approach. The texture is so enormous, it's so thick that it's almost impossible, isn't it, to hear all the detail that's going on all the time. And I think when I've performed it with Tenebrae, certainly, and in fact when we performed it in Santiago de Compostela, we actually had a choir of alumni from Clare College, Cambridge, and of course they all had very young voices, and it was perfect. Actually, it meant that it was very clean. You didn't have any sort of big voices trying to fight their way through to be heard, so it just meant that you had this sonority. And it's one thing about Spem, and I do think it's a fascinating piece, and I do think it's beautiful, but it's a bit like harmonically it's a mammoth. There isn't a lot of agility that can be achieved. So the harmonic progressions are fairly slow, they're fairly static, and because I think being adventurous with harmonic writing in the English Renaissance period, we'd only come so far in our musical journey, and the techniques that were known, and certainly the polyphonic school, which was obviously wonderful, it meant that there was a limit as to how what dissonances you were allowed to get away with, what your ears could cope with in those days, and what was possible to keep 40 parts going. And of course, when you look at the score, you realise that for a good deal of the time there aren't 40 parts singing, but when all 40 parts are there, it's quite a lot of the time it is one chord, and you are hopping around a harmonic framework. Da, 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 da. So you're kind of doing something that's it's not that melodic some of the time, and you will realise that you're filling in some rhythmic interest rather than harmonic interest. You realise that the chord is G major, and in order so that Thomas Tallis hasn't just created lots of parts singing ba da 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 da, he's given singers some kind of interest, and that'll be what we work on together when we go through this. Is this a passage where you're not really singing a wonderful melodic line, you're more mechanical almost, and you've just got to be very accurate with the notes. And if you're not accurate with the notes, then don't worry. I read something the other day, actually it was in the Russian concert, just to prove that I was listening and watching all the comments, but I had a wry smile when near the end somebody was told that we were about to do Spem in Alium with Nigel Short, and this lady wrote, Nigel Short, that sounds a bit scary. And I kind of wanted to, but it had all wound up by then, but I wanted to write, look, I might look pretty scary, but I'm not that scary. But we will work, together to make these phrases as accurate as they can be. And then obviously when you have a melody, you can free yourself up a little bit. But I think generally I would quite like to take a fairly simplistic approach to this music in terms of the way we deliver our individual vocal lines. Let's keep them clean, not absolutely senza vibrato, because I think that's, if you have a naturally warm voice that's got a bit of vibrato, then it's not it's not healthy for you to sing dead straight. And certainly with Tenebrae, there are moments when I say, look, I want a brassy effect, a sort of big brass chord, where I definitely don't want vibrato, but I really keep it to a minimum because I think it's not healthy. And also, you end up with a very white kind of sound after a while if you just keep going with that approach. And most singers don't have a massive vibrato. They have a vibrato that creates a warmth. And in fact, I've just seen the perfect word somewhere, and I can't remember who it's from. It's about to disappear. It was a shimmer. Nicola Edwards. There you go. A shimmer in the voice, and it's certainly something that I ask high sopranos for. Rather than a bladey sound at the top, just a bit of a spin. That's another word. Good word for it. Spin on the sound. So yeah, that will all be good. Steely sound. Tenors, generally, I'm afraid you probably need to be light. Very interesting. I mean, actually, when so we recorded this, the vast majority of all the tracks were done here in my house. We've got this old sort of cowshed, which has been turned into an annex, and it's sort of pretty grim. Nobody could live in there. But we turned it into a studio. We just store junk in there, and it's terribly dry, so it's perfect. So I sort of asked the singers to come to my house so that I could record it. And I think probably Ben England and Mark Strawn were thinking, what on earth have we let Nigel loose on? Because I said, look, I would quite like to record it all myself here, rather than getting the singers to do it individually on their phones. It would give you guys slightly more quality. So I bought all this new fancy equipment, microphone, and I got some software called Logic Pro, and I learned how to do it. And a friend came round, set me up, and off we went. And wow, I mean, God, it was amazing. Just sort of, we started with Jimmy Holiday. He came in, and he had a click track. That was all, nothing else. So I just gave him a note. In fact, I've got this sort of old electronic 2-manual organ console with a full pedal, which is right next to where the singers were singing, so they could give themselves notes. And I was in the next room, sort of listening with my headphones, saying, "Yeah, okay, that's great," or "That wasn't quite so great. You can go back and do it again." But to start with, no, Jimmy had nothing to sing against, so I gave him a G, and off we went. And if he sort of went a little bit sharp or flat, I'd say, "Oh, well, can you go back and do that bit again? And maybe you're a tiny bit ahead of the click here, or a little bit out for whatever reasons." And we bit by bit, and then he did the next choir line, and then we had, I think the next one to come along was Jeremy. And Jimmy, when he came, he hadn't been doing that much singing because we most of our work had still been cancelled, and this started back in April, I think, or May. And he was sort of getting used to it, and his voice sort of got, I thought, oh gosh, he's absolutely bashing it out. He's trying to get his voice in a good place, and he's going to tone it down, and then but it didn't. He warmed up, and it got stronger and stronger. I was sort of having to turn the levels down on my machinery. And then Jeremy came in next. Jeremy Budd, tenor, who did choirs 1, 2, 3, and 4, or choirs 1 and 2, A, B, and A, B. And Jeremy also hadn't done very much singing, and he hadn't been terribly well. And he turned up having not warmed up, and he sort of, oh, crikey. And it was, I was thinking, what do I say? But gradually he warmed up, and it's really funny. Every single singer sort of got into this space, and of course it's totally dry. It's a tiny room, and and they all sort of had to adjust, and some sort of coped with it better than others, but ultimately that's what we all did. But they all, without exception, basically came in trying something, and then basically, as they did track after track, they would just go for a more simplistic approach. And of course, Jimmy was then able to hear himself his first track and sing along to that. So, and I was able to adjust the balances. Yes, even me, I was able to adjust all the things, all the levels, so that the singers could then hear what they needed to hear. When you put this together, when we work on each individual line, I've asked Connor to, because I realised when I'm looking at my track, I can see the waveform, but I haven't got bar numbers. And of course, you will need the bar number, so that I can say the click will start from bar 40. And at the moment, I don't have a means of doing that. So what Connor is going to do is make sure that all the tracks, so if you've downloaded them so far, it might be a case of downloading them again. They're all going to have 1 over the beginning of bar 1 or 2 or 36 or whatever, so that if on your audio tracks you just fast forward or rewind, when you hear it, within 4 clicks, you'll know which bar we're in. I hope that makes sense. I'm sure it'll save us an awful lot of time. So I will, I can see the WAV form of the singer. So I can say, look, it's just going to be somewhere before this passage, but I don't know exactly where. But when the track goes, you'll hear a quiet 36, 37, tick, tick. And that way we'll kind of always know where we are. I hope that makes sense. Of course, eventually when you come to perform it and record it, I think we'll probably make the decision to keep the clicks in, because otherwise it's going to be an absolute nightmare. And I haven't done a video of me conducting it. I mean, it's in 4, so I mean it would make a fairly critically dull video, me going. And I couldn't possibly give all the leads. I pull lots of funny faces when I conduct, but I can't have 40 different ones for each line. When they come in, I could have red faces, yellow faces, green faces, little masks. So yeah, I think it'll just be a case of we keep the click track, and you have it in your cans, and you sing the part with a guide. So any other stories? Gosh, recording it was hilarious at times. The number of times I would sort of be following the score on my computer, on my old computer or on my iPad Pro, and then watching the Pro Logic, so the sound files go down. And I would forget to record, and then a singer would say, "Oh my God, I was terrible," or words to that effect, after they'd done something. And then I'd go back and we'd re-record it, and then I'd press the stop button. But then when I heard the whole thing later, put back together, I realised there were all these moments that were still in the tracks, which is kind of hilarious for me. So I had every single blasphemous utterance all in the whole thing. So I spent a good day actually editing everything out that I thought probably wouldn't be that helpful to you. I'm seeing somewhere here alto 2 seems to sing nulquam instead of nun, isn't it? Numquam. I think that's probably just a vocal thing if she's got a cold or whatever. But it's funny enough, there's a little thing here in the score. Did anybody spot the fact that one part has at some point non-habui? It only happens once in one part, and because I obviously had all the singers coming here, me and this singer suddenly realised, and I wonder if it's just one of these little things, that Hugh Keat talks about, the plot, Is there some secret message? Is it sort of Da Vinci Code-esque? The fact that it's just put in there, or is it a little joke of Hugh Keats when he did this? Yes, I would probably, I'd become infamous, I think, if I released all the outtakes. I did really, really think about it. Sadly, I've lost some of the tracks because when I was learning how to, when I was dragging myself into the 21st century and I was learning the editing process, there's a thing that I do, which is flatten and merge a certain track. And once you've done that, if you save it, you can't go backwards. You can't go back to the original things. And so you'd edit between the bits of takes that you want. And then, if I needed to do any slight adjustments, if they vocalize slightly before the click and therefore muddy some of the other tracks, I just tied it up a little bit. And I realized that after about 3 or 4 lines that I shouldn't have done that, because I then can't go back and adjust it. So there'd be four lines. And of course, those were some of the early ones where the singers really were, it's like a stab in the dark trying to put this down together. And they were some of the funniest ones where they're going, oh my God, what am I doing? Maybe if somebody, I don't know, what can you bribe me with? I could, I'm sure I could find, I could spend a day finding all the worst takes. I mean, some of them are, vocally, they're just sort of, or when singers go wrong, da 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 da, and they go da 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 da, oh, and then they're pleading with me to stop the take, and I'm I've stopped it, and I'm sitting here giggling, and I'm letting it go on. There was also a bit, actually, it's just before one of the big respice moments. And this tenor who was warming up and had just been poorly, so he was trying to get his voice back in. Da, 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 and he stops on this sort of note, and there's just a tiny crack, and he falls off it, and he can hear me giggling in the room next door, and so he giggles himself just before the big entry where we all come in together on Respice. And that was the second track. So all the other singers that came in, Nigel, there's a funny noise just before we come in there. It sounds like somebody giggling, and so I had to explain over and over again why there is this sort of just as everybody's about to, and you can just hear me wheezing in the background, sort of like that old cartoon character Muttley. But yes, so it was a lot of fun putting it together. Two interesting things. There's a singer called Stephen Kennedy. I don't know if many of you know about Stephen. He was, he is a wonderful man. Was a brilliant singer, fabulous musician. He was a chorister at Westminster Cathedral, and he sang with Tenebrae for many years. Did lots of lovely solos for us. If you don't know the quality of his singing, you can always look up on YouTube Tenebrae, Oh My Love Is Like a Red Red Rose. There's no video, but it's a live take. We never released it, but it was in a recording session where we were going to do some folk songs alongside some other arrangements, and 2 or 3 of them never made it onto disc, but there's one take of him singing the solo in Oh My Love Is Like a Red Red Rose. It's an arrangement by Simon Carrington, and when we did it, it was so utterly beautiful, and I am ashamed to say I was crying before the end of it, as were several of the singers, the girls especially. And at the end, I did get this cut out. At the end, there's silence, and then the voice from one of the back row in the choir sort of say, "Are you crying, Nigel?" And I'm sort of going, no, absolutely not. But anyway, Stephen Kennedy, sublime voice, and tragically, 2 or 3 years ago, Stephen had a massive stroke just after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year, and it was devastating for all of us. And we've sort of been encouraging Steve to keep singing, keep going, and I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to get him to my house, in very relaxed circumstances, so he wouldn't be stressed. For him to sing one of the lines. In fact, we was going to do two, but it was really too much for Steve. But you can hear him sing, properly from years ago, and we got him to sing one of these tracks, and it was just absolutely brilliant having him here and seeing him. We helped him from the car into the studio, and I think it's brilliant that this self-isolation choir actually has also helped bring Stephen back into our sort of hearts with Tenebrae, and we saw him recently. He came to a concert and it was brilliant to see him. And in fact, so one of the baritone parts I am singing, and I apologise for that unreservedly. And I have to say, I do singing in a little group of us. We do some. Yes, please can we hear the... Yeah, I'm going to play the full choir track. Anyway, I do a bit of singing, and I quite often think, I'm actually not in bad voice today. And then I recorded myself like all the other singers and thought, oh, wow, that's pretty rough. So I spent about 3 days trying to get that one track down. Anyway, so look, I'm going to play the full track now. I told you I'd rabbit on, didn't I? Okay, I've done the levels. Have a listen. So you'll hear the sort of fairly simplistic approach I'm talking about. Basically, there is a click track. Of course there is. They're all done to it. But I don't want you to ever sort of be unmusical so that you're rushing something. To be with a click track. Try and do it as, we'll work individually on all these lines. Try and sing the lines as musically and sensitively as you can, but whilst having the click track, obviously, that you're working to. So from various Tenebrae key singers, Jimmy Holiday, Jeremy Budd, my wife Grace Davidson, me, and Stephen Kennedy. As I say, do have a listen to his voice, and here it is. That is absolutely amazing, Connor, and all the guys that have put that together. I mean, isn't it? First thing to say is that final chord, when you get the clicks, I think everybody will probably realise there are 2 extra beats when it comes to it. The false relations, my word! I mean, it just digs in there, sort of little needles, isn't it? I mean, I know you will all pore over this 70-page article. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting stuff. And one thing that's worth mentioning now is the ficta. What you hear in each part, I've sort of decided should go in. Tallis, Bird, other English Renaissance composers, they did use this sort of effect. There is an interesting article in Hugh Keats' writings about whether or not, going along the theory of this being a plot, a sort of secret recusant Catholic plot, that the ficta shouldn't be in there at all, and that in fact what they wanted was to get back to something that was totally modal. So it was the pure Gregorian chant from the Catholic Church, basically getting totally away from any modernized harmonic thoughts, and so get rid of all the Protestant kind of leanings. But I think, I've just grown up, I'm sure, like many of you, when you get to know some of these pieces, you go through that phase where you first hear a false relation, you think, oh no, that can't be right, and then you sort of think, oh yeah, it's got something, it sort of digs in there, and then you get to the point where you expect it, and when it's not there, you go, oh. And I think this piece just needs it. I think it does colour it in a really interesting way. So I would, when we go through the individual lines, I would like you, please, to record what is there. If some of you don't know you all know what a false relation is, don't you? Da, 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 maybe if there's a da, da, an F sharp, da, and then another part at the same time is dum, da, dee, da, dee, and you get that little clash where the notes are sung together. And it kind of, I've actually seen a review in a German newspaper many, many years ago when I was in the Kingsingers, and said, the Kingsingers, they sang their light music very beautifully. I mean, this is a rough translation, but maybe they were not on form, or maybe they were tired, because in the Renaissance music there were several mistakes, and they clearly weren't that familiar with the music. And we were singing Bird and Tallis, which we know pretty well, and they weren't mistakes, but it was rather amusing that this poor chap thought, clearly false relations just weren't the done thing. So I'm just going through the score. I mean, I've got a fairly big old screen here, but my word, it's so easy to get lost, isn't it? When you're using that click track, I really would keep tapping the fingers out. My son still does on his choir stalls. 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, even when he's doing contemporary music, and then you see the thumb going down when it's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. I really would just sort of, or conduct to yourself, much as I do all the time, much to everybody's annoyance here in my house. I think one other thing to say in the score, did anybody spot the little non-habui? You get a special prize. I don't know what it'll be, if anybody spotted it, and in which part and in which bar. I'd love to ask Hugh Keat. I will ask him why it has. What's this? So every now and again you'll see a little thing in the score over one. It happens in some lines, not all lines, I think. for example, just going back quickly, bar 125. In the top soprano part, line 1, there's a little sort of like a bracket. That means your leading part. And when we get to it, when we rehearse these, we'll ask these to be a little stronger. I personally think there's probably not a great deal of dynamic contrast that Tallis was thinking about in all of this stuff. Maybe, the obviously the big respice bits where everybody sings together, they are really strong. But otherwise, I think, when you're singing individually, you just want to sing at what is a comfortable level. Maybe in the adu militatem bits, it can be a little bit softer. But if you see this little bracket over your part, then I would like that line just to be a little bit what's this? A 5-year-old spotted something. What's this? Anyway, I think, so the big chords are obviously pretty strong and the end is pretty strong. But generally, dynamically, we will work at what is a comfortable level. And I will tell you now that giggle moment that was in our version, the bloopers version, was in bar 121. And it was the tenor going, Nostrum, and he falls off that thing. And yeah, there was a lot of tittering going on as the two of us, tried to behave and save time and try and get it together for the next entry. But every single singer that came in after that heard it and said, what's going on there? Anyway, so what an extraordinary piece, isn't it? Just amazing. There are English words that were written for this, again to do with, I think, the sort of historically the time when this would have been sung, if it was one to a part by a gathering of diehard Catholics who were determined to keep their faith, even if it was just on a personal level and in their hearts. When they got together, they could sort of sing in Latin, but there were English words put together. And I think 1610 was when the then Prince Henry was made the Prince of Wales, and this is called a creation. And for this event, apparently it was sung, and there was an English translation of the piece, which I have to say is pretty it just sounds wrong when you know the Latin one so well. But this was, and of course Prince Henry died 2 years later at the age of 18. I think it was typhoid. I can't remember. Not that I was there, that I can't remember, but I can't remember when I was reading up on the notes. But I think it was typhoid he died of, and so the text is sort of fairly penitential. Whether or not that is, again harking back to this plot theory, or whether there is an outpouring. Oh no, because the Latin text was already in place before Henry died. But anyway, it's very easy, the 70-page document, to get slightly lost. Any other things I need to say? Well, I'll bang on about various bits and pieces in this long article that I think are fascinating as we go through all the individual lines. But for now, I hope you enjoyed listening to that. I did. It's kind of amazing that was put together in this old cowshed outside of ours. And when I was putting it together, it wasn't nearly as pretty as what Connor has managed to do with it. So I am just looking at, can we hear it again? Yeah, I'm going to play it again. That's what we're going to sort of finish off with. Any other questions? I think there were people saying they were struggling to follow the score. If you follow, actually, even if you're only following one of the reduced scores when you've got one or two choir parts, I think it's still quite easy to get lost. Some of pretty much all of my singers got lost when they're going from page to page on the computer screen. The key is just to focus on the number of the line that you are on. So if you're alto in choir 3 or choir 2A, your line is number 12, and you've just got to focus at the beginning of every single line. Look for that 12, zone in on it, and of course you'll get used to all the stuff. Before we listen to it again, I'll just tell you of one hilarious performance that I sang in St John Smith Square. I won't tell you which choir it was, but somebody that studied at Oxford was conducting, and regards themselves as a bit of a Tallis expert. The choir, no, I won't tell you the name of the choir, but anyway, he gave a wrong lead to somebody who dutifully came in a choir, and then that whole choir followed that one person, and then the conductor realised his mistake and brought the next choir in the right place. So for a good while, for a whole passage, one section of singers, one team of 5 singers were a complete beat out, and the conductor didn't realise until just at the end, and then when they were about to be brought back in, the conductor was looking around and wondering what was going on, and somebody, some clever person in the choir went like this to him. And got him back on track with that particular choir. I won't tell you who that person was. I'm sure you can't guess. But anyway, it was very funny, because it was like we were merrily drifting away in 400 years ago, 500 years ago, and then suddenly there was a bit of Schoenberg in there, and everything was going fairly wacky. But anyway, so look, I'm going to play it again. It's just, just enjoy it. All the shapes, we'll talk about all of this, the Latin pronunciation. I will help you go through everything, all the intervals, whether you're a melody, whether you're kind of one of the mechanical parts that are doing things. It's going to be a brilliant project. Cool nightmare. I hope you're not talking about this project. This is going to be wonderful. It's going to take quite a lot of time, work to get everybody sort of really in gear and knowing what we're doing, but it's eminently doable. And now that I've heard the Russian stuff that everybody's done and the Allegri, I actually haven't got any worries whatsoever. The most important thing when we're doing all this is to enjoy it and not to be fazed by anything. If there's one or two bits that are tricky, I promise you that once we've worked on it together, at some point it will just fall into place, and then you'll wonder how on earth you ever didn't get it right. So because it's all eminently doable, and much of it is very easy, as I'm sure you'll all find out. And if there are one or two tricky corners, we will work them out together. So it's going to be fantastic, and I can't wait to work with everybody. So I'm going to play it again. Spem and Alium, Thomas Tallis, and Choir of the Earth. I can't wait to work with you, and I'm so pleased that we're all connecting again. Got some wacky ideas for the future with Mark and whatever to work on other things, but for now we're going to lose ourselves in these Tudor glories. Okay, bye bye everybody. I'm going to turn my did I turn my volume back up when I was speaking? Yeah, I think I did. Ben warned me about that. But I'm going to spritz. Somebody's having a spritz. Oh, okay, yeah, switching off now. No singing to do. You can have your gin and tonic. I see. Enjoy, and I will see Soprano 1 from Choir 1 tomorrow at 3:00, and the rest of you at various points. Please do come and sing other parts, or just join us. We can all support each other through all of this, can't we? Okay, here it is again, everybody. Look forward to working on it with you. Enjoy, and good night. Brilliant. Let's go to work, folks. Can't wait to hear this all put together and hear you all sing it. If it's half as good as the Russian stuff and the Allegri, then it's going to be mind-blowing. Have a good evening, everybody, or whatever time of day you're at, where you are. Look forward to it. Bye-bye. Having worked out all this technology, need to find the off button. I knew something would get me. Right. Bye-bye.